This is why it's important to know about bugs and what they're thinking and their dichotomy, their psychology, because Jesus called the devil the Lord of the Flies, and a different extension from flies are gnats. Focused on top of the Toy Story car, and the Toy Story car is junk, and that's where Woody almost died because he got smashed and he had to get repaired in the second movie. But there's just a whole bunch of flies on top of that, and Gary Gilstrap had that car. I think it might be the same one, and this is something that everyone else knows what it is. This is the same size as the aisle that people get married in churches, and I just dropped this in front, so if someone's walking through with a wedding gown and they stepped in front of this, they would get cursed. Side with the same distance at a different angle. But it's a different shape because it's just 3 light bulbs. You can see the different cloud makes it a second dimension because it cuts in the middle of the parabola. And there's 2 types of shocks. They're either straight up and you've got 4 of them, or they're split out with different ends. So we saw Snoop Dogg's car was like LBC, California, but then this is like Al Capone in Chicago. Any electric or compulsion going. So it's not even a gun show in that disregard. On the electric with the LED, but that isn't even part of the engine. So in the engine, and I bet that there is a bit of an interaction between the engine and the LED light, but especially not since the car isn't even turned on, it wouldn't even matter. My shirt's dirty as hell. It's okay, we're at a car show. Look at the wall. So at a car show, they stamp you, and he like really made sure to get it. And the other reason I said that there was cars down here that was like alien tech, because I also eyeballed this one over my right shoulder, and it kind of looked like a saucer if it was all in a disc instead of an oval. Because I think they all evolved out from Mewtwo into Diglett, and from Diglett everyone else. Like all it needed was 2 mutations, Mew and then Mewtwo, and Mewtwo actually made it Diglett, and from Diglett they got everyone out from that basic shape, because Diglett is the most basic shape because it's so small, you know what I mean? This pattern, if this whole thing was one Diglett, other than the interior 4 pipes that came down to the size of a Diglett, like the size of a hot dog, all that information larger than a Diglett from an Oddish if it was that size. And then I have to check if I dropped $1 out of my mouse when it fell on the ground, or is this just a leaf? Wait a second. I definitely dropped $1 out of my mouse on the ground, and that's why I came back, because this fell out of my mouse, you know what I'm saying? My mouse is full of dollars because he's got DNA structure and the aspect of like the epidermis, except all the tension in the epidermis of the mouse is like its internal guts, and that's what all the dollars inside of the mouse is. DNA structure resembles when he hit the ground too hard. It's almost like if you hit the ground too hard, blood will come out. But what came out of my mouse was $1 because its DNA tension pushed it out that way. I'll show you later. It's like a Galilean cannon, but it's all built up like a DNA structure of our epidermis. If blood was included in that figure, because that's all of his density, which would be our internal and external epidermis into guts combination if it was all one DNA manifold. I'll show you what just happened to my mouth later, because he's got all the bills in him. It's too much to pull out now, and I've just missed Starbucks twice, you know, chasing mouses because they've fallen on the ground. Is behind the gate, you know what I'm saying? Oh yeah, the Oddishes. We were so close. We were trying to figure out the Pokemon if Oddish was a Diglett, which I think happened if Mewtwo was the first Pokemon and they all evolved off him. Diglett definitely evolved into an Oddish, if that theory is true. I just dropped my mouse. I think Starbucks is over on the other corner, but there's a whole bunch of smoke over this way. So I'm going to investigate in case it turns into a circle, and then it would be a smoke circle and the smoke signal. That's something Nightwolf would be able to do very easily if he knew how to control the the clouds to make a thunderbolt strike. So I just wanted to double check if that's no Native American named Night Wolf. Because if it turned into a circle, I would keep going closer, because that's what a smoke signal does, and what the Indians would do for Morse code. You saw this in The Lord of the Rings, where they turned the towers on fire and they sent the message down hills, and that's a different sign of getting it across. But Night Wolf could do that with smoke without lighting a fire, and so he's that much powerful because he can control the clouds and make thunder strike if he just holds up his arm. That's all it will do, and so that's obviously a skill. Like Superman's eyes, he can do the laser out of his eyes the whole time, but he just chooses one. And one playing card of the Pokemon card could be this, and this could be like the head of an Oddish. And that card can be one thing inside of a deck of cards. If you And when I said earlier about the flower and people being in it, like that seemed weird. Just like harder to think when there's all these noises that are banging. Well, then the data centers should be the size of like trees. And once again with the sirens is surmounting, but now I need to dip. It'll just stay stuck until it falls off in a different direction, one of which would be harder for it to digest, and then you just get a bad stomach ache and use up all this extra energy. And this is a lotus with a humanoid figure in the middle where its pollen should be. That's a place where bees should be. You know, but I'm outside. Well, I could spit inside and it could land on the ground and burn up and no one ever knew that happened. That would be cool, and I could make it disappear without it coming out of my mouth so you wouldn't see it. But just my lips moving would be like Photoshop, so it would be a hologram where you wouldn't see that either. And that's all like a magician's trick. There's magician's tricks and then there's carny activity. Oh shoot, I left my lights on in my car. And see, when stuff like this happens, the adrenaline goes up, the junk food burns quicker, and then the bigger crash. And so that's the environment. And when it's a down society, everything seems super important when it isn't. That's why I don't live in the city. Everyone in the city looks like they're burnt out. You know what I'm saying? And a similar derivative is the expulsion of life. You know, high rate. Everyone wants the cream of the crop, the top of the heap, to be the bee's knees, the cat's pajamas. All of these things are acclimated to how stars are. If you want to be a star, everyone wants to be a star. The stars, however, the real stars, they either live long by not having as much gas, or the bigger stars that do have all the gas, they shine the brightest. Those are the ones that burn out quicker than the smaller stars. Society, or a down society with a cancel culture, it's gonna weigh on you as a star being inside of a well, there's no turbulence in outer space because there's no air. I know one that's close to a black hole, so it would be circling the black hole as its gas is depleting. Well, that if it's a fixed orbit circling the black hole, it's gonna use up its gas quicker in that faction. And then there's one more similar where you wouldn't see that there's more than one until you hit it on the angle. So the top of the triangle, and then when you see the triangle from the base, you broaden the base, and so you can see more, and quickening the pace as well. If you look at each of these as derivatives, that would be a larger amount value of a derivative than just one. So now you've got all these derivatives, and the more you stretch out the base, your derivative, is able to have more of a max be as comparative to the black water appearing and disappearing act did and how they were performing, or if they were the first people ever to be alive. So if someone said, yeah, an Indian feather, why they wore it on the back of their head with the headband, was equal to wearing like a hard hat and a football helmet, I would have to say, well, you're probably right if it was an Indian saying that with like certainty.